reaching to you and looking out. No words to use, but thinking clear as you and me, learning from all he sees. I wonder how he feels outside. It must be cold, that's why he cries. So hold him close and let him know you're there, and that his world's turned inside out.
For centuries, scientists have observed human babies and consider them to be neurologically immature and disorganized. Darwin closely observed his own infant. Although his observations of gestures and motions have become classic, he failed to detect the remarkable sensory development, the organization, and the amazing ability for interaction already present in the infant's first minutes, hours, and days of life. In the past 10 years, as a result of a group of well-designed studies, there has been increased recognition of the newborn as a vital, responsive, and reactive being. This film shows 3 normal infants, ranging in age from 1 to 7 days, and it illustrates that the infant can see, have visual preferences, turn his head to the spoken word, and move in rhythm to his parent's voice. These amazing capabilities suggest that it is not merely by chance that the brain, the eye, and the ear are so well developed at birth. Spontaneous muscle activity and reflexes have been extensively studied. Neurologists introduce the assessment of muscle tone to evaluate the maturity of the infant at birth. Active and passive tone increase as the infant develops. Previously, it was thought that the neonate functioned only at a brainstem level, and this led to the development of the classical neurological examination. It was only recently recognized that higher brain centers modify responses even in the neonate, and that differences in reflexes can be found depending on whether the baby is awake or asleep. Dr. Prechtel in Holland first stressed the importance of documenting the state of consciousness of the infant during the examination. In the original studies, parents and scientists observed newborn infants just as naturalists would observe animals in the field. Dr. Peter Wolf, in his unique observations of the human neonate, introduced the concept of grading the state of consciousness. He noted that the infant has 6 different organized patterns of behavior. He classified the apparently haphazard behavior of the newborn according to the infant's state of arousal. Although these states seem like a continuous spectrum, they are qualitatively highly specific and different, each with a distinct type of internal organization and brain center control. These states constitute the basic rest-activity cycles of sleep and wakefulness. Wolf defined the awake states as quiet alert, active awake, crying, and the sleep states as quiet sleep, active sleep, drowsiness. Thus, for the infant, there are different ways of being in the world. In the quiet alert state, the infant is fully awake, but relatively inactive. His eyes are wide open, having a bright, shiny appearance. The neonate spends 10% of a 24-hour day in this state during the first week. This quiet alert state is immensely important and qualitatively similar to conscious attention in the adult. This attention allows the baby to respond selectively and adaptively to the environment. During the quiet alert state, the infant is able to fixate and focus on visual objects. When a moving object catches his attention, when he fixates on it, He will follow it with his eyes, and sometimes with his head as well. When he hears a noise, he will orient to the sound. The infant also responds to social cues, a voice and a face, cuddling or holding. He is able to communicate with his parents, to interact and learn. During the active awake state, there is frequent motor activity of the arms, legs, trunk, and head. The eyes are open and moving, but usually do not fixate on objects. There may be vocalization, but for long periods, the baby does not cry. In crying, the eyes may be open or tightly closed, and the face is contracted and red. This and vigorous motor activity reduce ability for attention. Dr. Annalise Corner at Stanford has shown that the state of attention can be induced in a crying baby by picking him up, soothing him, and putting him to the shoulder. Thus, mothers who pick up their crying infants are giving them more opportunities for visual alertness by enabling them to scan the environment. A baby can become quietly alert if something interesting catches his eye. This state of alertness can be increased and maintained by frequently providing a visually stimulating environment. In considering sleep states, the first is quiet sleep. The infant is at full rest. Respirations are very regular and even. There are no body movements, except occasional startles or fine mouth movements. Facial muscles are relaxed. The eyelids are closed and still, with no eye movements seen under the lids. In active sleep, the eyes are closed, but there is body activity, ranging from gentle limb movements to an occasional stirring of the body, arms, and legs. The respiratory rate is irregular. Facial grimaces are frequent and include smiling, frowning, mouthing, or bursts of sucking. The eyelids are closed and can be pinched or relaxed. Occasionally, rapid eye movements can be seen through the closed eyelids, as in this baby. The term rapid eye movement, or REM sleep, originated from these movements which occur during active sleep, contrasting to the quiet or non-REM sleep where they are not observed. In addition to observation, the sleep states can be defined by continuous recordings of various factors. These include respiration, heart rate, eye movements, EEG or brain waves, and muscle movements. A recording of active sleep would show quite irregular respiration and rapid eye movements, or REMs. In contrast, a recording of these parameters in quiet sleep would show strikingly regular respiration with no eye movements. The state of drowsiness is usually seen while waking or falling asleep. The baby may be still or moving. One can sometimes see smiles, frowns, or mouthing. The eyes have a dull, glazed appearance and usually do not fixate. The lids are droopy, and just before closing, the eyes may roll upward. Preterm infants are usually in a transitional state of sleep, which is difficult to classify. Not until 4 weeks before term can active and quiet sleep be clearly differentiated in these infants. Infants who were stressed at birth have irregular, disorganized sleep states, but with recovery, there is gradual reorganization. Also, preterm infants who have reached term still do not show the same level of organization as infants born at term. The infant demonstrates these states even while in utero. Before term, there is less quiet sleep than active sleep. With increasing maturity, quiet sleep increases and active sleep decreases, until at term, they each constitute 50% of the sleep time. As the infant develops, the percentage of quiet sleep increases relative to the amount of active sleep. In contrast, adult, active, or REM sleep comprises only 20% of total sleep, the majority of sleep being quiet sleep. Concurrently, periods of wakefulness increase. Immediately after birth, these cycles are disrupted, and the infant stays awake longer. During the first hour of life, there is a prolonged period of quiet alertness, which alternates with the active state. This is optimally suited to the important meeting and bonding between the mother and infant. The infant looks at his mother's face, follows, and responds to her voice. He is beautifully equipped as a separate individual for his first meeting with his parents. One of the primary ways in which human beings communicate on a nonverbal level is by looking at one another. This eye-to-eye contact between the mother and her infant, or en face, fosters positive parental feelings. There is an unusual sense of ecstasy at making contact with their baby, and parents begin to feel that he is their own. In the first hour, the increased period of alertness is at the expense of active sleep. This interaction is followed by rest for both mother and infant. By the 5th day, the state cycles have stabilized. Dr. Barry Brazelton and other observers have found that mothers who received a depressant drug during labor to reduce apprehension or pain had infants who looked less at their surroundings. The more drugs administered closer to delivery, the less attentive the infant is likely to be. This depressing effect on the infant's central nervous system lasts for at least 4 days. Disturbances of attention and state organization also affect the baby's ability to suck well and successfully breastfeed. For years, mothers have said that soon after birth, their infants could see them and respond. In 1958, Dr. Robert Fantz developed an objective method for defining and recording visual fixation in the young infant. Dr. Miranda, his associate, is examining an infant in a chair under this white hood. Previously, there had been sporadic reports that the newborn infant could fixate, but this was not generally accepted by psychologists or the medical profession. This diagram shows fixation, the directing or orienting of the eye so that the object falls on the center of the retina. An object that is being looked at or fixated is reflected from the cornea over the pupil. Here we see 2 patterns, a checkerboard and a plain white square. The reflection of the checkerboard can be clearly seen in the pupil and is thus being looked at. The tendency of the infant to look longer or more often at a particular pattern will indicate his ability to distinguish between the two and will also tell us which one he prefers. We will first show the infant the single pattern to demonstrate the reflection in his pupil. By this visual preference method, Fantz demonstrated that the newborn infant sees patterns and is attracted by sharp contours and light-dark contrast. The newborn has an innate ability to perceive forms and to select certain forms for longer examination. Watch the eyes of this infant as he looks. The reflection of the pattern is clearly seen in the pupil. Both eyes scan the pattern. The baby attends not only by looking, but by lifting the upper eyelid, brightening of the eye, and ceasing to suck. If the pattern is dark, he will search for light areas. If it is light, he will search for edges. And if he finds edges or contours, his eyes will scan in such a way as to provide maximal retinal stimulation. The chamber contains a device for showing the pictures and observing the infant's responses without the infant seeing the examiner who looks through a peephole. For testing, the infant must be in the quiet alert state. He is placed in an adjustable seat with the head positioned centrally, and then moved into this chamber, which provides a homogeneous visual field. This is what the infant sees. We will now demonstrate the preference between these patterns. The newborn infant prefers a larger pattern with greater contour and contrast than a smaller pattern. This infant is now looking straight ahead, not at either pattern. He then selects the two large squares. An infant will usually prefer patterns with more elements and detail than fewer elements. If we present a striped and a plain combination, the infant will prefer and select the striped pattern regardless of position, providing the stripes are wide enough to be discriminated at that age. Recently, Dr. Fantz showed that in patterns of equal size and number of details, the newborn prefers curved over straight contours. Note the rosette with the curved contours in the pupil. Dr. Miranda has been observing simultaneously. Which of these does the infant prefer, the scrambled or the normal face? There is a current argument in the literature of child development whether the newborn has an innate tendency to recognize the human face, or if he is just attracted to general features such as eyes, hair, and head outline in contrast to the background. In either case, it is clear that the young infant pays much attention to this important stimulus. These complexities of visual perception indicate a possible relationship between the infant's visual capacities and later cognitive function and development. Similar to the early data on vision, there are recent reports of the infant's ability to imitate gestures, such as protrusion of the tongue or opening of the mouth. Experimentally, it appears that the infant can match his movements to mimic these directly, and that he may not be just showing a general response to an interesting and arousing event. No one to date can explain how the baby can copy these gestures, since he has never seen himself and does not know where his mouth or tongue are located. All we can say is that we are viewing evidence of a marvelous innate sensory motor coordination that cannot be fully explained. The role of the infant's hearing in the development of interaction has been demonstrated by Drs. Condon and Sander. As early as the first day of life, the baby makes minute movements in precise and sustained segments that are synchronous with the rhythms of structured speech. When an adult speaks, he often makes expressive gestures, postures, and movements. The listener unconsciously synchronizes his own body movements to the sounds of the speaker's voice. This is called interactional synchrony. Here it is seen in an adult listener.
Why wasn't this observed centuries ago? You'd think that astute observers like Darwin, who looked so closely at his own infant and has page after page after page of his descriptions of his own infant's development and even Piaget. Why didn't Piaget observe this at an earlier time?
It's hard to imagine because once you see the baby within the framework of states, when you see the quiet, alert look, it's hard to imagine that you would ever see a baby without noticing this. It's hard not to see it once you've seen it.
Normal babies move in synchrony with words, but not with disconnected syllables. This has been observed throughout the world except in autistic children and schizophrenic adults. There is coordination in the movement of various body parts with changes in the sound patterns of the adult's speech. This first interaction shows this coordination. Then it will be more clearly demonstrated by a slowing of the picture and sound. In particular, notice the movement of the hands and feet.
Pretty baby. Pretty baby. Are you moving in rhythm to my words? Pretty baby. Pretty baby. Pretty baby. Pretty baby. Are you moving with my words?
This interaction or entrainment possibly prepares the infant for later language development. It also demonstrates one of the many aspects of human bonding and shows the infant to be a participant in interpersonal relations even from birth. In conclusion, the observation of the amazing capabilities of the human infant allows for many new methods of assessment. In the future, it may be possible to test every infant's mental potential in the first minutes and hours of life, rather than waiting until he is school age. Some early mental disturbances requiring immediate therapy may be detected by simple tests of brain function. Furthermore, we may be able to help each mother see and become attuned to the specific rhythms and individual behavioral characteristics of her own infant. The possibility exists that the survival of our species over the centuries has depended in part on these appealing characteristics of the infant that bond the parents and newborn together.
Flashing lights, strange people staring, all in white. The air is dry and looking out. No words to use, but thinking clear. What can it be? Where am I? Am I free? I wonder how this came about. Inside was safe, but now I'm out. I hope someone will help me understand. Give me the strength to find my way.
Much of the richness of life comes from the close relationships that each individual has with a small number of other human beings. It could be a special relationship between a husband and wife, a brother and sister, parents and children, or a small group of close friends. Many of the joys of life revolve around preparing for and making these affectional relationships. And many of life's sorrows come when they are broken. A mother's attachment to her infant may be the strongest human tie, and as such is crucial for the survival and development of the infant. The power of this attachment can be so great that it enables the parent to make the many sacrifices necessary for the care of the infant. This tie between the mother and infant is the wellspring for the infant's sense of self and for all subsequent attachments.
I saw how much fun my friends had with their children.
We began to realize how significant a child is in a life, and we decided it was time to have a baby now.
Pregnancy is a time of strong and changing emotions. The self-examination and turmoil that occur during pregnancy, delivery, and the first days after birth are important for making the adjustment to a new infant. These parents and others will be sharing some of their intimate experiences as they begin to develop ties with their baby.
We've spent a lot of time talking about having children, how we're going to feel confined or not confined, and how this is going to be relating to our feelings from our past, from our own families. Once we found out, then we started thinking about what kind of changes in our lifestyle there would be.
We feel like we're ready for this pregnancy. And it was really quite an amazing statistic that half the people in our education classes hadn't planned it or weren't really happy about being pregnant.
During the long months of pregnancy, the ties between mother and infant develop gradually. The sensation of fetal movement helps the mother begin to recognize the infant as a separate individual and lays the foundation for a relationship with that child. It is at this time that infants who were unplanned or unwanted may become accepted.
And then the baby starts moving, and that's very, very exciting. Then it feels more real. Prior to the baby ever being born, I seem to be really developing a feeling for the child, whereas I don't think it's quite as real to my husband.
There was this massive ripple, although it was like somebody had taken a softball and just moves it around inside. I can't even imagine what was moving around in there. It did amaze me.
It's now known that a fetus will not only respond to light and sound while in the uterus, but moves if bright lights or loud noises come too close to the mother's abdomen.
I feel the baby's very much a part of me. I don't know how I'm going to feel when the umbilical cord is cut, where he becomes a separate human being, breathing, eating, living on his own. What is almost frightening is the delivery.
Parents may have many hidden fears. Will our baby be normal? Will we be good parents? They also have fantasies about what the baby will be like.
One of the biggest things that I guess I'm concerned about is that the baby be okay when it's born.
You're concerned about your wife. I know that most deliveries go fine, and I know there's always a possibility that something could go wrong.
Towards the end of pregnancy, I wasn't so sure that I really wanted to be a mother after all. There's a lot of responsibility that goes along with it, and what if I'm not a good mother?
I recall having a dream about the baby. We had this baby and had a family. One of us died. It was a frightening thing. We were both concerned.
I'm not really sure what a newborn baby is like. They're so tiny and they're so helpless and small and they're so dependent upon you that it's very frightening.
When I think about the baby, I get really excited about it. I'm ready. I can't wait now.
I was pregnant, something we wanted for a lot of years. This is going to be a totally new experience for both of us. Neither of us have ever had a child in our family. I was the youngest of two, and Rob was an only child.
We sure don't want it to be an only child. It's a family turning point. If we were unable to have a family, our entire life would be so different in that, I go back to my high school reunion, my classmates are grandparents already.
Laboratory tests and physical examinations monitor the pregnancy and help to reduce fears.
There was a reserve before we got the results of the amniocentesis. We know darn well that problems increase with age.
The child was normal, and they do tell you the sex if you want it.
Okay, Mrs. Lake, I'm going to start your ultrasound.
Adam can hear what's going on. We can talk to the kicking thing in her tummy personally. He's already got a name for 5 months before he's born. There's a euphoria and jump up and down excitement about it.
One of my reactions was, well, I was delighted it was a boy, and I really didn't care whether it was a boy or a girl. I felt a sense of loss that it wasn't also a girl. I had lost one half of what my fantasies were.
You're seeing now on the screen is the baby's head. You see the baby moving? I am not moving the transducer, but the baby moving, therefore the picture keeps changing. This is the arm of the baby. Now you're seeing the baby's heart. See the baby's pulsating heart. Usually the baby's heart is much faster than the adult heart. Those dark line around the heart is shadow of the ribs. And these two white lines in the lower portion of the picture, this is the baby's spine. The baby, from all what I could tell, is healthy and living and very well.
Great.
Fantastic.
He looks terrific.
Yes.
It was about that time that I could first feel him starting to kick. That started all my fantasies going of what he was like and what he as an individual would be.
In recent weeks, I think I'm more apprehensive about it. The fact that I will be parenting Adam in a real sense. I've set up much of my work so that it can be performed from home. Hopefully, when Les goes to practice her profession, that I can care for Adam.
We've been married for 16 years and had our careers and been very independent, and having a child will be including a third party in our very nice, comfortable twosome. I guess I assume that in any relationship I have, I'm going to make some mistakes, if you call them mistakes, whether I intend to or not. Building a relationship and getting to know any individual is really coming to find out what they're all about, and sometimes finding out by the mistakes you make.
I'm probably a little more set in my ways than Les is. I find a new feeling of wanting to change, to adapt to some of Adam's needs, much more so than perhaps I do to anyone else. It's a great new venture, like kind of the first time you go on a big trip somewhere. It's not what you think it is. It's something entirely different. I think that's the way it's going to be with Adam.
Studies of human parental attachment have been stimulated by the observations of animal mothers. Each species has evolved to ensure its survival. This evolutionary process includes the parental care of the young after birth. To a great extent, the survival of the offspring hinges on the animal mother's attachment to him. How does separating a newborn lamb from its mother affect her attachment behavior? If a lamb is taken away from its mother immediately after delivery for a period of 15 to 20 minutes and then returned, almost half of the mothers will not allow the lamb to suckle. But if the mother and her lamb are left together for 2 days and are then separated for 15 to 20 minutes, the mother takes her lamb back immediately. This indicates that for the mother sheep and her lamb, a brief separation is likely to have more serious consequences if it occurs immediately after birth. If the mother and lamb are separated for a period of only 5 minutes after delivery, however, she will not only accept her own lamb back, but also any other newborn lambs presented to her. This suggests that events in the period immediately following birth may trigger mothering behavior even if the mother did not bear the infant herself. Species differ in the length of separation that can be endured and still ensure that the mother will bond with her own or an adopted offspring. These studies, of course, don't tell us what human parents do. They only give clues as to what we might look for in research studies.
Labor seems to me to be going very slow. It started already, probably it's been 11 hours ago.
The next 12 hours will see a transformation from a fantasized child to a realistic one. And that's an interesting process.
I'm kind of anxious to get to know this human being for what he really is instead of what my fantasies are about him. I'm sure that in many ways he will be different than what I tried to read into his kicking.
In almost every culture, there is a long tradition for a supportive person, usually a woman, who stays with the mother from the beginning of her labor until the birth of the baby. This person provides comfort, encouragement, and companionship. In our culture, the father is frequently the most supportive person for the mother during this period. Mothers who have a supportive person with them may require less medication, may have less complications during labor, may have a shorter labor, and may show more affectionate behavior towards their babies in the first hour of life. Thus, it may be important to mother the mother during the labor, delivery, and afterwards, so that she'll be able to mother her infant more easily.
That's it. Take a deep breath, push into your bottom.
Oh! That's it. Beautiful. Look at Robin. Open your eyes and look at Robin.
Out and in again.
You're pushing beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Oh.
You take a deep breath with the next contraction.
Yeah. And push.
And push.
Okay.
You've been doing a really good job.
Push. Beautiful work you're doing.
Push. Hold it. Okay. Now pant. Now push. Now pant. Now push. A little push. Little push.
Hey, there he is. Super. He's all colors. Assisting in the labor was kind of a renewed bonding between Les and me.
And that was very emotional. We'd really done it. We'd made a baby. When he's inside, he's real, but he isn't real. And then when he's on the outside, you have to say, my God, it really is a baby. And somehow it's a surprise. It was a lot of joint effort working together as a team. There he was, the product of all of our work and all of our planning and all of what we wanted came out pretty perfect as a result. And that's a very peak moment.
I just had no idea that it was to be that emotional. I remember crying, and it's been a long time since I've cried.
Solid. You're a solid little kid.
This exhilaration sometimes continues for the next several days.
What a doll.
The infant responds to the mother, and they begin to learn each other's signals, thus establishing a tie between them. The baby rewards the mother for her prolonged gazing, kissing, and fondling by looking into her eyes, smiling, turning to her voice, and quieting to her touch. It may be that this cascade of interactions between the parents and newborn in the first minutes and days of life ensures the further development of attachment. The mother and father are strongly attracted to the many appealing characteristics of the infant. One of these is the special state of consciousness, quietly alert, in which the infant's eyes are wide open and attentive. A fully mature newborn will be in this quiet, alert state for most of the first hour of life, ready for the important meeting with his parents. It's only when the infant is in this state that he's able to respond to his environment.
He was really looking us over and looking the world over, and the fact that it was really kind of a two-way thing. And that fascinated me.
There was a rush of feelings at the delivery. You could hear him, and he was real, and he was on my stomach, and I could still see the connection between him and me, and that was very exciting. He was so beautiful.
I was surprised at how he looked. I really was. I really hadn't any mental image of what he would look like.
It seemed so incredible that life could come that easily in that way. There was this tremendous feeling of relief where you just wanted to cry, and it was a relief and a happiness that just kind of flowed.
Is it love at first sight? Research has shown almost half of mothers have strong feelings of attachment while they're pregnant. 1/4 of mothers develop a strong feeling of love shortly after the delivery, and another 1/4 develop these feelings during the first week or so. However, almost 1 out of 10 perfectly normal women takes up to several weeks to feel a strong tie to her infant. The same is probably true for fathers of newborns. And fathers who are able to be with their infant during this early period following delivery may become a more active participant in the baby's future care.
Initially, I was afraid of him. He was small and he was tiny, but as I got to hold him and handle him more, I felt more comfortable with him, particularly after we'd had the first session with the baby. My husband said, "He's ours, I know he's ours." and he loved him very much. I knew I loved him, but it took me a little bit longer to realize that this baby was ours.
I have never met any individual that I have felt a tremendously close affinity for instantly. And I have the feeling that even with my own infant, it will take a while to get to know him, to appreciate him for what he is as a person.
To capitalize on the early attachment period, many hospitals have several rooming-in options open to parents. This allows mothers to learn to interpret their infant's needs and to become familiar with their activity and sleep patterns. Studies have shown that mothers who spend more time with their infants than is routine in the traditional maternity hospital breastfeed more successfully and may have an easier time with their baby. Occasionally, there are situations beyond human control that can interrupt or delay the usual course of attachment. Eric was 3 weeks premature, which made him sleepy, less alert, and slow to respond.
Oh, Eric, wake up. Wake up and play with your mommy. Eric. Oh, my goodness.
This is frustrating to parents, but they learn to wait until their baby is ready to interact more fully.
He was still sleeping so much. I was getting discouraged. He still felt like he was mine because he and I had some time together, and he had looked me over, and I had a chance to kind of look him over. Last night, he started becoming more awake and alert and responsive and looking at me when I talked. I sent him back to the nursery at night so that I could get my own sleep. But it really didn't work out too well because I was too excited, wondering what he's doing. My husband is almost jealous that I am able to spend so much time with the baby. He got to feed the baby some water, and he just enjoyed that thoroughly. I think he'd love to breastfeed if he could.
This is my first exposure to any baby, and I have had to be shown about even the basics of care.
If he's really hungry, he's going to be nursing more often.
He seems to like to really face it, be straight at it.
He's got a very good suck. Looks like he's one of these natural feeders.
See if he burped at all. I am just so attached to him and the strength of my own maternal feelings. That is a very big surprise to me and something I was not at all prepared for. Just because it's Adam, whatever I do with him is somehow really fun to do.
The maternal instinct overwhelms everything else.
Yeah.
I can't nurse Adam. I mean, I'm not going to be Adam's mother, but I can help parent him and be supportive.
For years, mothers have complained about being torn between the new baby in the hospital and a young child at home. Since young children have a different concept of time, they sometimes believe they've been abandoned for a long period when they've only been separated from their mother for a few days. This short separation is often upsetting to the sibling under 6, causing the child to have temper tantrums, sleep disturbances, or eating problems.
These are both mine.
That's what they give Mommy when she comes to the hospital.
And Stacy has one just like this, only it's littler. Wait till you see Stacy. She's a cutie just like you.
Some of the siblings' problems may be due to the separation from the mother rather than solely to jealousy of the new baby.
This is your baby sister. Look. That's Stacy.
Hi, Stacy.
Yeah, can you wave at her and say hi? Yes. Oh, look, she must be hungry.
To help reduce the older child's distress, many maternity hospitals are changing their visitation practices, such as allowing the child more frequent visits with the mother. Sometimes it's confusing for parents to know whether a sibling should visit, because they often cry when the visit is over. However, the benefits far outweigh the relatively short distress when the young child has to leave. It's important to emphasize that the young boy or girl is coming in to see their mother first and foremost, and secondarily to see the new infant.
Ready? Wait, bye-bye.
For many women, the first days after discharge from the hospital are described as extremely difficult. Because the sibling's been more involved during the hospital stay, the homecoming is less fraught with anxiety. For those mothers who had an opportunity to get acquainted with their infant in the hospital and who also have some support at home, the transition seems to be a lot easier.
Well, I'm glad that you think so.
I think I've been home from the hospital now for 5 days, and other than tending for him, The total amount of my activities otherwise has been to be able to write 4 thank you notes. And I have to laugh that that is all I've been able to achieve other than tending totally to his needs. But I've enjoyed that. I laughingly complain about it, and yet I find everything else can wait. It's not that important.
I think what surprised me the most is that he's such a calm and peaceful baby. Part of that is that Les and I were so prepared for him.
Even for couples who have been childless for years, the adjustment to a new lifestyle can become easier once attachment has taken place. What actually happens between a mother and infant that fosters the attachment process? Their behaviors complement each other on a number of sensory levels and serve to lock the pair together. Touch is a reciprocal pleasure and provides body warmth. There is a mutual interest in eye-to-eye contact. A mother's use of a high-pitched voice in talking to her infant coincides with a baby's attraction to speech in the high-frequency range.
Amanda Jane.
The rhythm of speech stimulates both the speaker and listener to move to its rhythm.
Let's blow bubbles. Come.
Babies are capable of imitating gestures at even an earlier age than this 4-month-old infant, as early as the first day of birth.
You're trying.
A baby's suckling or cry will stimulate milk production. The breast milk not only transmits to the baby a defense against infection, but the sucking of the infant causes hormones to be produced that help return the mother's uterus to its former shape. Interestingly, during the breastfeeding, the distance between the mother and baby's eyes is about 8 to 10 inches, which is the optimal focal distance for a newborn. By the end of the first week, infants are able to recognize their mother's unique scent. The British pediatrician Aidan McFarlane made the striking observation that most infants, after the first week of life, can smell their own mother's breast pad. The pad with the X belongs to the mother, the other to a stranger.
No. He's testing out to see which one he likes best here. He did turn to yours initially. The thing is that they smell the smell of the breast and then they try and nuzzle it. And they get a bit frustrated because they say, hey, this should be associated with breast milk.
By reversing the breast pads, the infant still chooses its mother's.
Okay, hang on. Now. And away he goes again on yours. He says, that's the one for me, I think. And he's really into it now. And look how he's sucking. You see, he smelt something.
One of the greatest rewards to a mother is her ability to comfort her newborn by bringing him from a crying state to an alert state. These complex means of communicating between mother and infant are mutually pleasurable, a beautiful synchronization whereby the dependent infant ensures his continued care and the mother is rewarded for her efforts and commitment.
I used to be madder than heck when somebody'd call me in the middle of the night, get me out of a sound sleep. But when it's him, Les pokes me in the side and says, "You want to change him?" I say, "Sure." You know, I enjoy that because it's an alert period for him usually, and I get 10 or 15 minutes with him 2 or 3 times a night. He just really takes in everything around him, and he'll focus on you, and you've got really great eye contact with him, and he responds to your talking. And there's a body-to-body communication, a patting, a comforting, and he's a very responsive kid. I don't think I ever expected that at so young an age. Great, it's great.
Eric. He's just becoming visually more alert. It's really fun to watch him explore the world around him. When I talk to the baby, sometimes he will look at me and turn his head towards what I'm saying. And it's very exciting because I'm able to communicate with him, and in turn, by looking at me, he communicates back. He seems to be aware that I'm there and that I'm somebody significant, that I'm his mother. This love that my husband and I have has come a long way, and the baby has made it even go further. You give without strings attached to your child. It's so much a part of you that you just love it as if it were you. It's an amazing type of love, it really is.
This is only the beginning in the complex process by which parents become attached to their newborn infant. Mothers and fathers can expect an ever-increasing range of responses as their infant grows, along with the development of a deeper attachment. A Mayan Indian saying tells us, "In the new baby lies the future of the world. The father must take him to the highest hill so he can see what his world is like. The mother must hold him close so he will know the world is his."
What a joy and what a celebration he is. We look at him and we say, my God, what a miracle that some little being that's 10 days old can do all of this and be as complex as he is. It's something really worth celebrating.